Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. With your hosts, Drew and Daniella. Take our hands and let's walk this journey together.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Meaningful Hearts podcast. Today is going to be a fun one for me because I get to put Drew in the hot seat. I get to ask him questions that he does not know in advance. He actually doesn't know these. So I'm excited. Drew, how are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling wonderful. I feel like we're doing like a variety show where I stand up and I have Drew has a blindfold on and he's standing on a block of ice and he's trying not to freeze to death while they throw flaming arrows at him.
You know, they're not, I won't say they're not, maybe one of them isn't going to be like, oh, you might have to think about it. But I think these are good questions for me to ask you, but also for our listeners to ask themselves. You ready for the first one?
Yes.
What is your best quality? You can't say everything.
I would say one of my best qualities because I think I have more than one.
Okay. Well, what's your best one? What would you consider top notch? Like number one?
I think I'm kind. I think kindness, because it plays into everything else in my life and my philosophy about things, opening the door for somebody, letting somebody come through, sharing something with someone, being mindful of others.
Just ask one. Just one.
I'm
your
saying
best quality.
Kindness plays into those things. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay.
How does kindness play into, like, when you're brutally honest and you're very straightforward, or when people have told you that you are, what is the word what they've used?
Cruel.
Yeah.
Cruel. You're so cruel.
Yeah. So how does kindness play into that for you?
I care so much that I want you to walk forward with the real belief of the situation and who you are, instead of pushing forward with bullshit and making yourself look like a fool. I'm giving you, I guess I'm giving it to you in a way where I'm telling you the truth, but I want you to be better. I'm not doing it to rain on your parade or make you feel bad. And sometimes that takes saying what nobody else is willing to say, but saying it from a place from your heart and hoping, and like, no, even if you walk away from me and you never talk to me again, I was willing to push you in the direction that you needed to go to be the best version of yourself. And it's kind. It's almost like, it is kind. It's a brutal kind.
Yeah, I can see that. You are very kind in that way. I would say that sometimes your delivery isn't always kind, but I can understand your intention behind it, and that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I'm like Amazon Prime when my delivery. Sometimes I show up that day. The item might not be in the box, but it's,
Yeah. Okay. So this is the level is increasing a little bit. Okay. Are you ready for the next question?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to be a good man, and how similar or different is it from being a good person?
I think being a good man is standing up for what you believe in and doing the things that aren't necessarily the easiest, and providing and being there for the ones that rely on you. Your wife, your kids, whoever. I think that's part of manhood. I think that a lot of people try to go out of the way of that. But I think being a man that stands up for what he believes in, pushes forward even when it's tough, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, and in raising your head high and walking with your, standing straight up with your shoulders back and pushing forth. I think that's ultimately what manhood is about.
Where's vulnerability in there?
Being able to cry, being able to admit that you're wrong.
So is being a good man like, is there space for crying in there? Because you said it's about
I said crying.
taking yeah, but after I asked in your original and like in your first answer, you were talking about um being a good man is being able to take care of others and hold your head up high.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
And if tears are coming out of your eyes and not hiding them, right? I think we're raised to hide our emotions, right? We're raised to push forth and not be emotional. But I think that you could own the tears. There are many men that get emotional in sports. Men get emotional. Men cry. I've seen it many a times. I think that's the only time where it's widely accepted amongst men to cry. But in reality, I think that owning it, pushing forth, even if it's hard, even though you're crying or even though there's tears or it's painful, you hold your head up high and you're proud of who you are and you walk forth and you own that. I think that's the best way to say it.
And how is that similar or different to being a good person? What does that mean to you?
Well, I think being a good person is a generalization, right? You could be a good woman and have a lot of the qualities of a good person, but you're a woman. There are characteristics that make you a woman in your role, I guess, in a sense, if you want to say that, if we're not offending anyone. But as far as a man, yes, I'm a good person for those things.
Well, that's why the reason why I asked the question is because if somebody's listening and they are a man, they can really relate. But it's important to define, you know, where are there, I guess, like, where are there similarities and differences? Is being a good man the same thing as being a good person and being a good woman? What is that from your perspective? What does that all mean?
Well, being a woman with those qualities, but doing it in a way that a woman would do it versus a man. Now, if you strip those things away, just being kind, being yourself, pushing forth, and doing what's needed to do in your life as far as being a woman versus what a man would be doing. That's being a mother, being a nurturer. I mean, I'm not assuming that I know all these things about what a woman should do. I'm just saying that in general, that you could attach your all your good qualities to that role and own that role.
Do you think that being a good man is part of being a good person, or being a good person is part of being a good man?
Yes.
It's just like a wordplay here.
Yeah.
The reason, and part of me, like, I'm just busting your chops at this point. But it is important to clarify these definitions, right? Because somebody can be a good man, like a person can be a good man to their partner, but they might not be a good person to the people on the outside, and vice versa. So the question comes in, you know, does a good man fit the qualities of a good person, just like does a good woman fit the qualities of a good person, and vice versa? So I was just kind of word playing with you here.
Gotcha.
Okay, are you ready for my last question?
Sure.
This is like the most challenging one. What have you learned about yourself and your world during your most difficult times?
How resilient I am and how hard I can push myself forward and take that extra step that I didn't think I could take, given if I was never put in that position to begin with. It's almost like thinking that if you're thrown into the water, you're not going to swim, you're just going to drown. And then you realize you've been swimming for 2 miles. Like, how is that possible? So, and that's only at that moment. Yeah, you might be able to swim even further given the pressure to be put on you to do that, right? They talk about like mice and how they attach something to the tail of the mouse to see how much pulling force they have. And now they put like a piece of cheese in front of the mouse, and the mouse pulled, and then eventually gave up, not being able to reach the cheese. But then they put fire or heat behind the mouse, and the mouse literally pulled, and kept pulling and didn't stop. It like exhausted itself and kept trying to pull. And it's interesting what you could do when you're forced into a situation or you're put in a situation versus when it's left up to you to make that choice. And I think that when I've been in my darkest places and kind of forced into those situations, I've come out better and I've pushed myself more than I ever have.
That's a really good answer. And honestly the whole reason why I wanted to ask questions along this realm. These are strength based questions that I would ask patients. You know, um, I'm very tailored around strength based work because so many of us fail to see the good qualities in ourselves. That's why I asked you what your best quality is and what it means for you to be a good man or a good person, and how similar and different, and ultimately what you've learned, because that's very true. You know, when we look at our difficult times, we don't see how resilient we are unless we do the self-reflection and think, wow, like that was a tough one, you know, I really made it out of that. And you know, it just so happens that your answer was the fact that you learned how resilient you are, because that's what I encourage my patients to see in themselves. Like anytime that you go through a difficult time or a challenge or a hurdle or a struggle, I actually used this analogy earlier today. um, in life, we come across bumps, hills, or mountains. And sometimes the bumps are minor, sometimes they're a little bigger. Sometimes the hills feel like they never end, and sometimes you feel like you're on a mountain that you're never going to reach the top. But what we forget to think about as human beings is that with whatever bump, hill, or mountain you come across, your legs are also getting stronger as you're crossing these things. And I think that that's very applicable. I think it's very true. And if we were to have these beliefs instilled in us when we were younger, or just have that mindset, we wouldn't even see failure as failure. Everything would be a learning experience. So I love that you said, you know, during your most difficult times, you've realized how resilient you are, because I think it's very true. The same for me, same with my patients and the people that I work with. And that's really why I asked the question, and the other questions too, is that if you're if you're listening, I would want you to answer these questions for yourself. You know, what is your best quality? You know, what do you like about yourself? You know, what do you consider a good person is, if you're male or female? What do you consider that, or man or woman, in the sense of what do you consider being a good man or a good person or a good woman? You know, and what have you learned from life through the things that you've been through? So thank you for sharing.
Thank you for
I,
asking.
yeah, of course. What did you think of my questions?
Um, I guess the second set of questions with the man person thing was a little confusing at first, and it was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I could tell.
The last question was my favorite. I think that's knowing what somebody's made of and knowing what you're made of, and being able to go to a difficult place and come away from it and look back and appreciate it, versus dreading and loathing it and looking back as a bad memory, a bad thing. You'll learn something from it, and that you could use going forward, because anything that we experience, we can't get back the time that we were there, but we can take something away from it, so we don't feel like we lost everything out of it, right? And I think that the experience is very important, that you learn in those at every moment in your life. You need to learn something, because if not, you just wasted your time.
Yeah. Or you're going to keep repeating the same things. Correct. Until you learn.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope I clarified the second question for you, not just for you, but for listeners. My intention is not to confuse. It's just that sometimes, you know, we're vague in our definitions of terms and what we define as being good or bad. And sometimes, you know, it is different. You know, a good person might be different or the same as a good man or a woman. And it is really just mainly food for thought and questions that you can ask yourself to gain self-awareness. So I thank you for letting me. I mean, you didn't really have a choice in asking the questions, but I thank you for like being open. You could have easily, you know, been like, no, I'm not going to answer that. I declined to answer. I plead the fifth. So I thank you for participating.
Thank you. And thank everyone for listening. Daniella, take it away.
Where am I taking it to?
I don't know. I think you're gonna play like a song. Daniela's been working on a song with like the recorder that you get in school. She's gonna play. She's gonna play a flute melody to end the show. We're gonna learn that.
No, I think I would just add that I hope that these questions add some value to your life. And, we thank you all for letting us ramble in your ears.